Hey everyone, my name's Chris Lambert. On this channel, we talk Kanye West, and today we're talking the Heaven and Hell music video that premiered at the end of today's Sunday service as a bit of a surprise. There was a gap, and then suddenly this video started playing. It looks like it's projected onto a wall, which also happens to create kind of this cross-like shadow on the visual. But the video is not on Ye's YouTube yet, which is unfortunate because it's amazing. I think it's my new favorite Kanye music video. And it starts off in this kind of dark and empty city. You see these people on this balcony. And we jump ahead a little bit, and it goes from the balcony to, you can see the people wearing kind of the outfits that Ye was wearing, right? You have the mask on, all black outfits, the gloves. This is essentially his like listening party aesthetic. It's what he did the photo shoots in, if you remember, that kind of kicked off the whole Donda Stadium era. He had that all black outfit on Instagram and was posing for photos. So you see what looks like a parent and child, this empty city, the dark streets, people in this outfit sitting on the sidewalk, steps, shadows. It's very like heavy. These people starting to kiss. And then as they're sitting there with one person on the phone, they kind of cover the kid's eyes, and then you get this explosion. Like the whole thing shifts, and you see this swirl of souls, spirits, like spiraling around, and you can kind of see that cross imagery here, right? Like this is the cross part of the T, this is the base going down. I don't know. I think this might be someone like in the actual, because this is being projected on the wall. I don't know if this is like the choir director, Jason White, just kind of standing there and ending up on the wall. But you at least have this imagery of the spirits swirling around, which is so dramatic and so next level. And then you have like a couple people standing here observing this, right? You can see them there on this rock, looking up as these spirits circle around, which is just mesmerizing and epic in the way that is fitting for this song. Heaven and Hell, we've talked about on the podcast, are watching through, not like the YouTube videos themselves, the news updates, but on our podcast where we do lyrical analysis of Ye songs. How Heaven and Hell is so epic. It's the tipping point of the album. It's this really important piece to the concept of the album, and this music video and how like huge it is in concept and visuals, I think does justice to the production of this song and just where this song goes. It's very fitting, I think, of the energy. So you go to these spirits rotating around, and then you have the smokiness, and then it just starts showing these photos, like artistic renderings of, I still don't have all my info on this. I don't know if this is supposed to be like heaven, if this is supposed to be hell, if it's images of heaven and hell, but we're definitely going to have to dive more into this when the images are, or when the video is available, and can really like look at it, dive into it, do some cross comparisons. And as soon as we figure out, or West Up ever figures out the source on these photos, we'll put them into context for this video, make a whole video on it. But I am astounded, and I do have some info for you currently. If you're looking at this and going like, what in the world is going on here? I mean, the easiest thing is that we see people like going about their day-to-day life in these cities and these streets, and they're reduced, right? They're all wearing the same thing. There's no real like personality to them or visual to them. And then when the song blows up, you now suddenly have all these spirits swirling around. So you have this difference between like life and the afterlife, or reality and the spiritual, or the simulation versus beyond the simulation. There's at least a juxtaposition, a contrast, a dichotomy that's being set up between these two worlds. And you can start to extrapolate from that what you want. We do know that when we covered Heaven and Hell in the podcast, the sample that's used on Heaven and Hell, which I forget what the sample is, but I know that it's talking about society essentially, and saying that like everybody has to work for a living, and getting at kind of the dystopian aspects of society and bringing in aspects of heaven, but bringing in aspects of hell. It's really getting at these like highs and lows, good and bad, tension, which is befitting a song like Heaven and Hell, where Ye sets us up in this world of like, you know, I was like in pain, but no more of this, no more of that. We're done with all of this. Like devils are going to pray now, and then the song erupts. So I like to think that it's getting at those society aspects, kind of calling back to the original sample, and looking at the fact that we're putting all of that devil stuff in the past and getting into the spiritual stuff. But this idea of heaven and hell that's there in the title, right? Looking at the imagery. So these are the photos that stand out to me, right? As soon as I saw the swirling spirits, I called back to Dante's Inferno, because there's part of the Inferno in the Divine Comedy, right, where they talk about these swirling spirits that surround Dante and Virgil. And I knew I had heard that imagery, seen that imagery before. And I thought it was limbo at first, which is why I was saying, like, in the Divine Comedy, they describe limbo as a world of lost souls, which that would have been so perfect. But it turns out it's not limbo. It's actually the lustful, which we'll get at in a second. But when you see this image, it's supposed to be like the people that ended up sinning in lust and having these like carnal urgings end up in this like maelstrom, this hurricane of souls that are all kind of like reaching for each other but never able to touch each other because they're ethereal. So it's kind of the punishment for being so physically focused that they're now like spirits that can't touch but are so close to one another, and you just kind of watch them all swirling around. It's hard to see that and not think of this, right? You see like the swirling spirits all around. But this is also Gustave, I'm gonna say Dore. Dore. I don't know how you say his last name. I should have looked that up. But he does all these like really striking like biblical imagery of like heaven and hell, and he has a ton of cool stuff. And it turns out that Ye has actually potentially referenced him before. You can see here this post on West Sub Ever that said 2 new 2015 So Help Me God cover is leaked, and this is Gustave Dore right there with this image from the Bible of going to these people that have died, and God's like, watch me reanimate them. And he brings these people back to life, which we actually talked about this on the Praise God episode. This depiction is actually from the exact part of the Bible that Ye references on Praise God, which is kind of cool. So you have that connection right there. And I'm pretty sure I should have looked into this as well. I thought that Ye had posted a Gustave Dore image at some point to either Twitter or Instagram. I thought Instagram during the Donda rollout, but it might have been just Twitter when he was doing all of the like biblical posts back in the day. But I know that there's been other Dore imagery associated with Ye over the last couple years, which is how I found out who he was to begin with. It's just he seems like he has an aesthetic that Ye would just be like, what a masterful artist. And so you see this imagery and you think like, oh, and this is the exact part that it's from right here, Canto 5. Thus I descended out of the first circle down to the second, that less space begirds, and so much greater dole that goads to wailing. There standeth Minos, the Minotaur, horribly, and snarls, examines the transgressions at the entrance, judges and sends according as he girds him. I say that when the spirit evil-born cometh before him, wholly it confesses, and this discriminator of transgressions seeth what place in hell is meant for it, girds himself with his tail as many times as grades he wishes it should be thrust down. Interesting. So Minos stands there, and as the souls come into hell, he's like, all right, I know what you did. You go to circle 5, you go to circle 8, you go to circle 1, you go to limbo. He's like kind of the judge of all these things. So right here, always before him many of them stand, then go by turns each of them unto the judgment. They speak and hear, and then are downward hurled. And then where do we get? I came into a place mute of all light, which bellows as the sea does in a tempest, if by opposing winds it is combated. The infernal hurricane that never rests hurtles the spirits onward in its rapine, whirling them round and smiting, it molests them. Jeez. When they arrive before the precipice, there are the shrieks, the plaints, and the laments. There they blasphemed the puissance divine. I understood that unto such a torment the carnal malefactors were condemned, who reason subjugate to appetite. And as the wings of starlings bear them on in the cold season in large band and full, so doth that blast the spirits maldecked. It hither, tither, downward, upward drives them. No hope doth comfort them forevermore, not of repose, but even of lesser pain. So he's just describing these spirits that like swirl around, that are like pulled and thrown by the wind, and are unhappy about it, very unhappy about it. But these are the people that just gave in to their carnal appetites rather than having some self-control. But then I was looking up more like Dore Divine Comedy imagery, and I saw this one, right? Which looks a little familiar, right? Like it's almost, I don't want to say like one-to-one, but if you were to say like, hey, create this visual in real life, like just do like a computer graphic version of this drawing, right? Like I'm not crazy here. You see it, right? It's the same angle. You have like a person down here, you have the people here, and even on this one here, right? You have the person on the rocks, and here you have the person on the rocks. So it's like you have the rocks, you have the rocks, you have the swirling souls, you have the swirling souls. And then here you have like somebody standing looking down this like tunnel of whirling souls into this endpoint. And here you have the tunnel of whirling like angels. This is angels now, and the endpoint. It just seems very drawn from Dore's work. And this is depicting the end of the Divine Comedy. This is paradise. So down here, it's no longer Virgil and Dante. It's Dante and Beatrice, and Beatrice is his like divine muse, which there's some confusion over that. People often think Beatrice was the great love of Dante's life, and it's for good reason. He spends the whole of the Divine Comedy being like, Beatrice, you're so amazing, so beautiful, like you, I do everything for you, I love you. Except Beatrice was a woman he had only met like once or twice in his lifetime, had only seen a couple times. It's just back in this day, you would pick, it seems, from what I gathered from this and like Don Quixote, you just pick like a random woman and be like, oh, you're my divine inspiration, I will do everything for you. But it wasn't regarded as romantic interest. It was just kind of this like artistic crush. But Dante was married to another woman, like happily married to her from what I remember reading. Like never was like creeping out on Beatrice. He just decided to use her for this. Which is pretty wild, but she's the one he encounters in paradise and who he's like yearning to meet in paradise. So this is them looking at the rose that they see that's kind of the portrayal of the heavens. And you can see that it's described in this section here, Canto 31, which if you look at Paradise, starts with Canto 1 and goes all the way to 34. No, that's Purgatory, sorry. Paradise goes to 32. So St. Bernard points out the saints in the white rose. Oh yeah, it's not even, well, Beatrice is standing there, but Beatrice departs in Canto 31. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was describing 32. So at 31, he's standing with Beatrice, and it starts with, in fashion then as of a snow-white rose, displayed itself to me the saintly host, whom Christ in his own blood had made his bride. But the other host, that flying sees and sings the glory of him who doth enamor it, and the goodness that created it so noble, even as a swarm of bees that sinks in flowers one moment, and the next returns again to where its labor is to sweetness turned, sank into the great flower that is adorned with leaves so many, and thence reascended to where it love abideth evermore. Their faces had they all of living flame, and wings of gold, and all the rest so white no snow unto that limit doth attain. From bench to bench into the flower descending, they carried something of the peace and ardor, which by the fanning of their flanks they won. So it's just kind of, oh my goodness, okay. It's just describing, as you see, like a brief glimpse at my novel. It's just describing this like snow white rose that's made up of these angelic spirits that are swirling around this. You already have the idea. With the, I guess the, what, saintly host at the far end of it. So you're just seeing like God and the angels and everything at the end of Paradise. This feels like a little bleak, right? It's not the bright white light that you would expect. It's still gray. It doesn't have quite like the heavenly beauty that the 24 music video has. So I'm curious to see like what's going on with this. If it's just like the gray tones as these spirits are kind of transitioning, as they're going between heaven and hell, or caught in between heaven and hell. And because this music video is coming at the midpoint of the album, when Ye himself is still caught between heaven and hell and looking to move forward and move beyond, if we're going to get another music video that's brighter and lighter, not another music video for heaven and hell, right? But like a No Child Left Behind or a Come to Life, like something that is going to take a similar perspective on like people and souls, and just say like, hey, this is the redemption, this is the saving, this is the grace that we've been waiting for. Maybe the Hurricane video will do that. I don't know, we'll see. But I'm very interested to see what he does next with this, because this imagery is just fantastic. And I know there are people that buy into the divine comedy theory of the listening parties. That listening party 1 was supposed to be set in hell, which is why Ye was wearing red. Listening party 2 was supposed to be purgatory, which is why Ye was in black. And then the last one's supposed to be paradise, which is why we get the fire and Kim coming out in whites and Kanye kind of being reborn through the fire and flame when he goes into the house. So before, it was just kind of like, oh, look, there's some lining up between these things, but there was no direct reference to the divine comedy. Right, it was just kind of a coincidental, like with some correlation, but not necessarily evidence, direct evidence that you could point to. I would say that the matching of the Dore prints or interpretations of Dante's Inferno and the way in which they line up with this Heaven and Hell video is the strongest connection we've had between the Divine Comedy and Donda's rollout, or some of the imagery with Donda to this point. It could also just be that Ye's looking up imagery of, you know, heaven and hell and all that afterlife stuff, and Dore's art is coming up and it's completely out of context to the Divine Comedy, and he's just looking at this and saying, this looks awesome, I already love this guy's art, we're gonna use this as a concept for it. And it's just like tangentially related to the Divine Comedy without being intentionally related to the Divine Comedy. But we're starting to see a lot more Divine Comedy stuff come up and up. So I think that's pretty cool for the people that want to buy into that theory, that you're having more to kind of bite into. It's just anything that kind of adds conversation in depth to Ye stuff is something I'm down with. But I'm really looking forward to this video being uploaded. I hope it's uploaded. If it just existed as like part of a random Sunday service, that would be a little disappointing. So we will see. But as soon as it's posted and as soon as we get more info, of course, I'll make another video for y'all. But that's it for this video. Until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.